guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today we are going to make a faux enamel pendant with polymer clay. So what you're going to need is a stamp that has a raised pattern. This is the one that I'm using, but there's just about any stamp that you can use. There's lots of different ones that you can use, so go play around, don't feel restricted to the stamp that I'm using. Then I'm also going to be using pearl white polymer clay that's been rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and I'm just going to dust a little bit of cornstarch on both sides just so that it helps prevent it from sticking to the stamp and my fingers. Bring over the stamp, pop that over, and you can use a roller. I am going to just use my fingers just because it's a relatively small stamp and I want to get a nice clean image, and I always get a nice clean image if I use my fingers, whereas the roller is sometimes a hit and miss. So just press it over the whole surface, and now you're going to see that the back has picked up these fingerprints, and even if you do use a roller, you're going to want to texture it. So keep it in the stamp like so and bring over a texture. And I'm just going to use this texture sponge. I sell this texture stamp and actually I sell the texture sponge and the texture stamp that I'm using on my Etsy shop, Jessica Design. So if you're interested in them, I have a link in the description below and you can go check that out. But there we go, that will just give a nice texture over the back and just make it look more finished. There we go. And lift up. We should be able to relatively easily get that out, like so. Okay, and then I'm just going to use one of my maxi rectangle cutters to cut this out. Okay, now I need to position that correctly. There we go. And just press down, like so. And there we go. Then just pop that onto a piece of paper. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with because you will be able to turn it around. Okay, there we go. Then I would just recommend to give it just a very light burnish just to flatten it out on the piece of paper. I'm not pressing very hard here, just enough to get it to flatten out a touch. Then I'm just going to pop that to the side, and I'm going to bring over some translucent Kato liquid clay. And I'm just going to make 2 puddles. There we go. And I also have some white Kato clay, liquid clay here. And I'll make a puddle there. There we go. Okay, then for the translucent ones, I'm going to pop some alcohol ink in. So I've got sepia and ginger. And I'm going to do 1 drop in each. I'm just opening it off to the side, so bear with me for just a moment. I want 1 drop because I don't want it to be too strong of a colour. I want to keep the translucency of the liquid clay. There we go. Then just grab something to mix that in and just give it a thorough mix through until you can see very few streaks. You don't have to mix it completely, but you want most of the streaks to be gone. I'll just clean that off and do the same with the other. There we go. Okay, and now we can begin to colour. So I want to be working with the dark one first, and I'm going to pop that in these areas. And now don't worry if you get the liquid clay on the raised part of the pattern. You want to try to get it in just the indented areas, but if you get it in the raised section, on the raised section, it's not a complete disaster, don't worry about that. We can clean that off later. And we're going to have to for some of these tighter areas because we're just not going to be able to avoid getting a little bit of mess on those. But I'll just add the dark brown liquid clay to the areas that I want, and then I'll show you what we'll do next. Okay, then I will move on to this lighter colour, and in a lot of the spaces I am actually going to mix the two colours a little bit, just because you want a little bit of variation. And I'm going to clean off my skewer each time just to make sure that we're not, so that I've got control over the mixing. And don't mix it through completely, just do it so that you've got striations. Go, clean that off, and I'll do that at the bottom over here as well. And you can see we are getting a lot of that on the white. That is perfectly fine, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, then I'm going to do the exact same as I did with the brown, and I'm going, well, with the dark brown, and I'm going to add this into the areas where I want it to be. And then we will move on to the white. The white I'm going to mix with a lot of this brown because we are popping this onto pearl white already. There we go. Then lastly, we're going to take the opaque white and we're going to pop that into all the areas that have not been filled yet. And I'd highly recommend kind of mixing it together, like so. Each time you do that though, you are going to want to clean that off completely because it's going to mess up your white on the other end. So start out with the part that you want to be pure white and then work your way in, and then do a little bit of smearing, clean off, and repeat for all the filled in areas. Okay, there we go. Now you can grab a wet wipe, and now this part you're going to be quite careful of. We are going to be putting, oh gosh, excuse me for just a moment while I gather my brain cells again. Yes, we're going to be popping gold liquid clay, not liquid clay, alcohol ink. We're going to be taking this and we're going to be popping that over the top. So any areas where you might not have cleaned up the liquid clay, it's not a complete disaster. I do want to try to clean it up, but it's not a complete worry. If you want to clean it up really well, we can sand it later on, but that's going to remove a lot of this nice shine, which is something I don't want to do. So I'd rather just take a wet rag like this and very carefully and methodically clean up the edges, like so. Okay, there we go. And the rest can be cleaned up after baking. Now I'm just going to grab a little circle cutter, and I'm just going to use it to cut out a hole for stringing later on. And then we are going to pop that into the oven for a full hour to bake. Okay, and here it is out of the oven. So you can see that it has changed colour quite a bit. That's okay. If you're not prepared for the colour change, then I'd highly recommend baking a small test sample before making an entire project, just because the alcohol inks will change colour. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to grab that gold alcohol ink, and I've just given it a shake, and then I'm just going to open up. There we go. Pop a fair amount down. I'm going to grab a sponge, just because it will give us a decently even surface. And I'm going to dab that over the surface. Okay, and if it gets on some of the coloured pots, that's perfectly okay. I'm alright with that. Okay, and I'm just going to give it a decent cover. Now it is covering the colour pots a little much, so I will go back in and clean that up in a bit. I'm just giving it a proper coat first. Okay, then I've just got a ball tool and just a wet rag. I'm just going to wrap that around the end, which will give me a little bit more precision. And I'm going to go in and clean. And you can spray a little bit of isopropyl alcohol onto the end. That generally also helps. So just bear with me for a moment. I'm going to do that, because we are working with alcohol ink, and so the isopropyl helps clean that up quite a bit. Okay. And just go in and clean it up as much or as little as you want. Yeah. Okay. Then I'm just going to grab a bit of black paint. Grab the same sponge, just swapping. I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to rip it in pieces. I'm going to take a piece, dab it so that it's quite dry. And then speckle that over the surface. The key is to make sure that it is quite dry. And then I'm just tapping very lightly over the surface, prioritizing the edges. And remember, if that doesn't work, you can always just wipe that with a wet wipe and you can clean it back up again. So don't worry about messing up. Okay. And I'm just going to dab on the inside. Again, going very slowly. You might need to clean it up a little bit again, because I don't really want black on the inside at all. But I still want that gold to be quite visible. And I want it to be blacker around the edges, so I'm going to go back over the edges, like so. Okay, and I'm also going to do the same for the back, because it does have a bit of a texture, but I'm going to kind of match it up, like so. Okay, there we go. Kind of has this nice aged metal look. So now you can pop resin onto it if you want to, but I kind of want to keep the erased texture, so I'm going to be giving it a Varathane gloss finish, which is just a gloss varnish. You can use any gloss varnish you may have available. I'm just going to give it a nice even coat of varnish and then let it dry for a couple hours before stringing it. And just make sure to get that varnish in all of the indented areas. Okay, and when you're done, just let it dry and then we can finish it. Okay, and here it is all dry. So you can see it's got a nice kind of enamel look to it. Also kind of has an almost aged metal look, so I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. But now we are going to assemble it. So I've got a cord over here. Oh gosh, what are these called? I'm pretty sure some of you will know what these cords are called in the description below. If you do know what they are, leave it in the comments below. I bought this a while back and I cannot remember what it's called, so sorry about that. But yes, I've got it all finished up. It's a ready-made necklace. All I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over 2 rather large jump rings. Just bear with me for a moment. There we go. 2 large jump rings, and that's all I'm going to use to assemble this. So just pop it on like so. You can just use 1 jump ring, but I think it looks nicer when you use 2 or more for a bail. Oops. But yeah, that is basically it for the tutorial. It's very nice and easy. I've gone for a much more, I guess grungy is maybe the right word, but I've gone for a much more rustic appearance than my last faux enamel attempt, but I'm quite happy with how it turned out. It looks really interesting. I will try to remember to put the link to my previous enamel attempt in the description below. It went with a much more shiny polished effect. This one is a lot more rustic, so depending on your preference you can follow one or the other of the tutorials. But yeah, that's basically it for today's tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you would like to support the channel, please do consider becoming a member. There is a join button just below the video. And there is also a link to Patreon if you would prefer to become a member there if you're interested in becoming a member. Remember, I'll also sell all my own tools, stamps and supplies, things like that for the Polymer clan on my own Etsy store, Jessima Design. I have a link to that in the description below as well. Every time you guys support the shop, it helps support this channel so I can continue creating videos just like this one. And commenting also really helps as well, so if you have anything that you would like to say about the tutorial, questions, please do consider commenting below. I'll try to answer that as soon as possible, and it also helps support the channel, and so it is greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.